Hello,
Hello.
everyone. Welcome to our weekly Call with Dr. Cook. Today's exciting because it's part one of our five-part series focused on the 5 domains of quality of life. Today, we'll be talking about financial, which is always fun. So, Dr. Cook, I'll turn the time over to you. We're looking forward to the presentation and the information you have for us.
Well, thanks, Cami. It's great to be here. Hello, everyone. I'm going to start by sharing my screen. I would imagine all of us have had an experience similar to the one in this picture. And that is you are at a conference or you're just talking to someone and they ask you, oh, well, what do you do? And you say, well, I'm interested in limbic arc, or I'm sharing limbic arc. And they say, what's that? And this happened to me last week. I was at a conference and I got asked more than once, oh, what do you guys do? Because we were there on behalf of limbic arc. And, in the past, we have kind of focused our introductory remarks about limbic arc on the technology itself and the theory behind it and the principles of how it works. And that just takes too long to explain, and it's too complicated, and people either they're interested in that kind of stuff or they're not. And if they're not, their eyes glaze over, and before you have a chance to explain it to them, they've checked out. So what I want to introduce to us today is a way to explain that, or a way to answer that question in just a few seconds. And here it is. Limbic arc is a quality of life accelerator that uses informational data to help the brain reorganize subconscious patterns, making them more coherent and reducing friction. This center-out approach improves mental, physical, financial, social, and spiritual well-being. So this is the approach I'm going to take in the future. I'm going to talk about the benefits, briefly describe how it works, but not go into all the rabbit holes that, they don't have to understand all that. And our new logo is an illustration to reinforce that. Each of those flares that comes out from the center is representative of one of the 5 domains that constitute quality of life. So you have mental, physical, financial, social, and spiritual. And if you remember in that dialogue, the focus was on a center out approach. Now, some of us, some of you may have introduced limbic arc in terms of what it's done for you. In other words, you turned on an info boost and the effect that you were after you received, and you recognized that maybe your pain went away or maybe a relationship improved. And so the tendency then for us would be to explain limbic arc from the outside in. In other words, oh, this is a tool that will help you with X. But really what it does is it helps you with the center of everything. And you're going to get spillover in every one of these domains, these life domains, even if you're focused on one particular domain. So let me go to the next slide and explain a little bit more what I mean. Let's say that I'm talking to a friend and that friend is commiserating to me their financial woes, and they're interested in a more stable financial life. Well, here's a way I could posit my introduction to limbic arc directed at finances. What if improving your financial life wasn't about pushing harder, but about reducing internal friction? So there's a question, and it gets them thinking, well, maybe I'm going about this wrong. Limbic arc delivers informational data that helps the nervous system reorganize patterns beneath conscious awareness. When this happens, people often experience greater clarity, resilience, and progress across all 5 quality of life domains: mental, physical, financial, social, and spiritual. One of those is financial. Now I've got my friend's curiosity piqued. Yeah, well, maybe it isn't about just pushing harder. Maybe there's more to it. And so it opens the dialogue for me to explain how limbic arc works and how from the center we can impact all aspects of life. But if he wants to focus on financial, I introduce him to an info boost that might that's directed to that particular domain, and hopefully he'll experience the benefits. Hopefully he'll end up having more money. But money and finances, it's just not about money. And that's one of the things that I think people don't appreciate as much as we should. Sometimes we just think, oh, dang it, if I just had more money, all my financial problems would go away. But I remember once years ago, I was in a bank, and I was probably borrowing money, because why else would you be in a bank, right, Cami? And the banker and I were chatting, and he said something to me that stuck with me. He said, "Poor people make poor decisions." And when he said that, I thought, yeah, I've never thought about that. But since then, I've observed that. And I've observed that people who are in dire financial straits chronically tend to make decisions that keep them in dire financial straits. And so it isn't about pushing harder, it's about reducing internal friction. In other words, there's something going on inside these people that keep them in the socioeconomic state that they're in. Now, that's not always the case. I know that sometimes we have luck, and sometimes we have bad luck. And sometimes our financial circumstances are beyond our control. But that's not the case most of the time for most of us. Most of us have a lot more to do with our financial situation than we admit. It's too easy to be a victim, you know. Well, limbic arc is a tool that bypasses the conscious mind, where these stress patterns live, where these poverty habits exist. And it delivers this data in a way that bypasses the resistance or the friction that is created by the incoherence that we live in, the incoherent pattern that we live in. And I guess you would call that the chaos. And so if you live in a state of financial chaos, you tend to make decisions that are more defensive. Your cognition actually narrows, your focus narrows. You become more victim oriented, you become more antisocial. And all of those things are self-fulfilling prophecies. They will keep you in poverty. And if you then turn on an info boost and you receive through these subconscious channels the information your nervous system needs to rebalance coherence, you may find yourself to be not only richer, but acting like a person of wealth. You may find that your tendency is to be timid and to be suspicious. And when you turn on your info boost focused on the financial domain, you become less suspicious. You become more social. And in the process of doing that, you find that your social circle and your ability to interact socially brings you opportunities for financial benefit that you were not seeing before because you were in this chaos state. You may find that there are spiritually things that you need to incorporate into your life that will then make your relationship with money more mature and more of a funnel instead of a a black hole where I want money and it just goes into the black hole. You realize that you're just a conduit, and if the money passes through your hands, you use it as a steward, and in that process you open yourself up to actually receive more money, so your financial situation improves. And we could go around every one of those domains. Again, Limbic Arc is a center out technology. And the reason that it's effective is because that's its perspective. It's a center out technology, and it works from the subconscious to the conscious. So if you turn on an info boost and it's focused on money, does that mean you're going to have, does that mean you're going to have a lot of wealth? Well, I hope it does. But I have known people who are wealthy who I wouldn't want to trade places with them because they're so fixated on the money at the expense of the other things in their life. And I've known people of modest means who are content and their lives are more harmonious across all domains. And I would say that when you look at them, they're actually wealthier than the people who have a lot of money who are in a chaotic state. Now, I'm not saying that having a lot of money is a bad thing or being modest in your means is a bad thing. My point is the financial domain is not just about money. It's about security, it's about stability, it's about agency, where you have the opportunity to actually make a difference in your life because your agency counts. And I think that we all should be focusing from time to time on the financial domain and see what happens. Cami, I think I've said my spiel.
Well, I would just like to, as you're going through this, the first thing that came to my mind is, you talked a lot about our personal financial state, but I see it in business as well, Vaughn. I go back to even in business when our financial house is not stable, living in chaos brings just all sorts of problems. You can't feel that peace that's so important. So not
Yeah.
even in our personal lives, but just business, this is such an important topic.
I think life is a lot of life is just balancing stress, isn't it? I mean, we
Yes.
have stressors that approach us. It might be that you have a teenage child who's driving you crazy, and that's your most immediate stress. It could be that you don't know how you're going to make ends meet at the end of the month. It may be a health issue. It may be an aging parent. I mean, there's just lots of things that are always confronting us. And the most resilient position is that center out focus,
Yeah.
where where limbic arc frankly shines. That's really what it
Mhm.
does.
That's
And
right.
we talk about business too. I think that it's plain to see that in business, poor people make poor decisions. Because
Yeah.
if you're spending all your time just managing cash flow, you're trying to take a little bit of money and spread it over a big area. That takes a lot more work than having enough money to pay all the bills, and now you're focusing on expansion of your business.
Right.
And
Right.
and and that's true in business. It's true in personal life as well.
Yeah. No, living in that state where you're constantly worried about cash and can't feel any peace or stability, it's not productive. And, you're just constant worry and stress. So it's important to get that right.
Well, I hope that on this short call that we can convey the new messaging that we're introducing this year with Limbic Arc, and that is the focus on the quality of life. Limbic Arc is a quality of life accelerator, and And the information on these slides is an easy way to make an introduction to someone that isn't so technical that you just you lose yourself because you're not an expert in the technology, or you lose the person you're introducing Limbic Arc to because you're talking about things they really don't care about. So
Right.
I don't have much more to say, Cami. Do you?
Well, thank you, Dr. Cook. This was great information, great insights, and we appreciate your time.
Well, it's always great to be
And
here.
I'd say to all of you, go ahead.
No, I just saying it's great to be here.
And once again, I'll always say to all of you, if you have any questions, concerns, feedback, send those into success@limbicarc.com. We'll see you next time.
Okay. See you soon.
Bye-bye.